Okay, perfect. So I would like to welcome you to our team building for Capstone students at Georgia State. We really welcome you and we really appreciate your participation. And I would like to ask you how you have gotten involved with blockchain and Bitcoins, how this topic even got into your mind, how you got involved into this and why.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for having me, Justina, and it's nice to see everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join. My name is Roop Singh, as you know. How did I get involved? So back in 2015-16, I had known about blockchain. I've been in the technology world for, I don't know, forever. I have an undergrad in computer science and master's in information systems, and most of my career has been at the intersection of business and technology and strategy. So I was more on the business process automation side of things in the corporate world, and I had known about blockchain back then. And the more I researched, the more I found out that there is a lot of potential here. It can be very transformative. It can transform business models. It can create new products, new markets, and it can really change the way we live. It's a basic foundational technology that has a lot of implications. So the more I researched, the more these aha moments happened. And there was a point in time when I think 2016 and 17, I literally read everything there was. I read, at that time, maybe 100, 120 white papers. I also read a lot of basic technical documentation of how public blockchain, distributed ledgers, etc., worked. And that gave me a further insight. But what I also realized that a lot of this space had not connected with people in the way it should have, meaning there were camps of people in the technical world that understood, or they were at that time even Bitcoin evangelists and people who just loved the idea of a digital peer-to-peer cash system without any third party. So there were a lot of those kinds of people, but in the broader business world, so to say, or even in the consumer world, the implication or the transformative aspect of what blockchain could bring to the world was not really well understood. And there were a lot of reasons for that. One is people have intellectual hurdles to jump to. They like to live in the current world till they see something, they don't believe it. They don't understand how things could change. And two, I thought the discourse, the conversations in this space were very myopic and very limited, meaning that they were limited to either technical details or technical people talking about technical stuff. It's like geeks talking to geeks. And or it was crypto evangelists, or at that time it was only really Bitcoin and Ethereum had come around, but very few people were actually using it. So it was just crypto evangelists talking to other crypto evangelists, and that was a very small subgroup. So what was missing is this connection between technology and business, technology and strategy, technology and consumer behavior, technology and economics. And to me, this became a multidisciplinary field that I wanted to get deeper in and use my background and expertise to illustrate a few things that a lot of other, even senior corporate CIOs, CTOs, CMOs, CFOs were not really connecting the dots. And forget, on one end, we had a lot of people making a lot of noise and hype, versus on the other end, we had a lot of skeptics. So I saw myself as somebody who can bridge that gap, who understood both sides and actually could relate to them, but also illustrate and explain to them how these transformations will happen and help them jump these intellectual hurdles, which is what I've done in the last few years, being through the few TED Talks or TEDx talks I've given, a lot of university lectures. I've designed a course called Blockchain Strategy for Business Leaders, which I teach in business schools. I've been writing a book for the last 3 years, and a lot of paid and conference lectures and university lectures and things of that nature. So I hope that gives everybody some context where I came from and what my intentions were.
Absolutely, that was wonderful. And I have one more question for you.
Yes.
For someone that just graduated, never learned blockchain, never heard about Bitcoin, what is the length, what is the process for them to learn and understand?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would actually say this: you would be surprised that people of that age group, you'll be surprised how far advanced they are. They may not have studied it as a subject matter in school, and that's fine. But because of the environment they live in, they know what NFTs are. They know what cryptos are. I'll give you an example. This is 2 years, maybe 3 years ago now. A friend of mine reached out and said, hey, my son has been investing, but he's been losing some money. He knows about these things. Can you guide him? Because he knew I was in the field. I said, yeah, absolutely, sure. And I had never met his son. It turns out, how old was his son? He was 12 years old. And this guy, Nick was his name, was amazing. He knew more than a lot of CIOs I had talked to. And he had gone, researched himself and played with things, and he had experimented and he had figured this stuff out. So that's just one example of what this generation is. We may think that they don't know, but actually we are the ones that don't know. They are way more aware, and they are aware in the way that they are living in this reality. So if when I, in a moment in the presentation, when I talk about virtual goods and video games, most of the folks at that age group have played video games and have dealt with skins in a video game or virtual goods. That's not a new thing to them. Crypto is not a new thing to them. NFTs is something that they have been creating. So to me, first we need to get off our high horse and say, oh, we need to teach them. They are actually the one teaching us. A lot of the innovation that has come in the space, look at the guy who started Ethereum. He was 18 when he launched Ethereum. So with founders of IOTA, they were very young. And that's been a general trend. And that speaks to their comfort with tech and their comfort with going into these new spaces and not being hindered by the old world that other people live in. So that's one point. The other aspect is, well, find out, apart from just basics of technology, find out what interests you in it. Do you want to be a software person? Do you want to develop code? Is that your interest? Or maybe you want to start a business, or maybe you want to create, you're an artist and you want to create these NFTs, or maybe you just want to invest and trade in crypto, which can be risky but a very lucrative endeavor. So figure out which angle works for you, and then pursue that. That's what I would say.
That's a great answer. And what I've heard, they're going to teach us, not that we are going to teach them.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's actually the sad to say, but it's the conservative incumbent 50, 60, 70-year-old executives are the ones that I am having to teach. They're the ones that need learning, not the 16-year-old or the 18-year-old. 18-year-old needs direction of where to put their energy and talents and skill, but they're way more comfortable in this environment. They intuitively get it, versus others who think this is alien stuff.
And we'll find out when we get to the question answer session. We'll see what is their point of view on this topic. But I was really interested to see how can we help and how can we integrate, correct? Because at the end of the day, that's an integration
right
between the younger, the current, and the older generation, making sure that everyone understands is on the same page.
Right. Yeah. Great questions. So if you're ready, we can get started.
Yes, that's a great start for your presentation. I'm going to mute myself.
Wonderful. So today we're going to talk about NFTs, and understand what those are. We'll talk about this term called Metaverse that's been thrown around a lot. Facebook recently became Meta with a nod or a wink to this worlds of Metaverse, if you will. And then we'll talk about the underlying basic foundational technology of blockchain and how it's enabling the rest of these dynamics. So if you've been following the news, an original Banksy painting has been burned and turned into an NFT and been sold for lots of money. Grime, the artist, sold $6 million worth of digital art as NFT. And by the way, some of this news is even dated. It's not, recent, as you can see. A 10-second video clip sold for $6.6 million as an NFT. BBC, one of the oldest organizations in this world, gets into the blockchain token space with Doctor Who. Tom Brady launched his own NFT company, which comes on the heel of NBA Top Shot. This is one of my favorite stories. So this journalist who writes in New York Times wrote about blockchain and NFT in New York Times and then converted that article into an NFT and then sold it. Brilliant, isn't it? It's the column sold for $560,000. People have spent over $230 million buying and trading digital collectibles of NBA highlights. This is the NBA Top Shots I was referring to. And this, as you see, is quite dated. It's from earlier this year. Now what we're seeing is all the other leagues, all the other sports, be it soccer or football or even cricket, have digital collectibles. And if IBM is about to turn patents into NFT, that is a use case that you don't usually think of. So all the patents that are registered in USPTO could be, and in fact, I think would be eventually turned into NFTs. So what are these non-fungible tokens? What are we even referring to? So I'm going to break it down in language that hopefully is simple and straightforward to understand, but we can discuss more in the Q&A. So think of NFTs as a digital representation, as a representation of anything that is physical or already digital onto a public registry. Public registry meaning where we can ascertain what the asset was. So let's take an example. Let's take this art hanging on your wall. And let's convert that into a digital asset. And then let's register it, quote unquote, register it or mint it onto a cryptographically secure blockchain. And we'll get to what that is, but blockchain is just distributed ledger. So it's a ledger that keeps record of things, or could be anything, any data. So let's mint it onto a public blockchain. And now we have an NFT. Why do we call it non-fungible? So there are two kinds of tokens. One is, think of your dollar bill, or let's say if you had $100 bill and I broke it down to $50 and $50 and I gave you two $50 bills, you would still have $100. The value of the two $50 bills matches the value of the $100 bill. But if I took a piece of art or a sculpture or let's say a music video and I broke it down into 5 parts, those 5 parts will not be the same as the original piece. So what that means is that this asset is not fungible. It cannot be broken down or can be exchanged into parts. It is whole as it is unique as the whole it is. So again, think of art, it is the way this art is drawn, it cannot be broken down further. So when we digitally represent it on a blockchain, we call it a non-fungible token, as opposed to a fungible token, which would be able to be exchanged and is not unique. What NFT gives us is certain powers. It gives us a title of ownership of that asset. And by asset, I mean any asset. It could be a physical asset, like a painting, or it could be already a digital asset like a music video, or even a movie, or a song, or any virtual goods that you trade in your video games. All of them could be, in my opinion, would be converted into NFTs. So as you widen your lens and you think about, okay, now I can register any asset, be it physical or digital, and I can represent that onto a cryptographically secured blockchain. What does that mean? That means anything and everything around us in your physical environment, your car, your phone, your fridge, or in your digital environment, your pictures, your profiles, the videos you create, the music you might create, the art you might create, all of that would eventually be converted into a non-fungible token or NFT based on blockchain. So as you widen your lens, you'll realize all we really need are three things. We need an asset, something of value, something considered valuable, like a stock, a share of a company, or a bond, or art, or commodities, anything that is considered of value that can be represented as an NFT. Then we need a mechanism for identifying the ownership of such an asset. We need to be clearly able to say, Justina owns this piece of asset, and let's say your house. Well, how do you know Justina owns the house? Well, first of all, there has to be a registry of the house. It's typically in the United States in like a county office, or maybe even a state office that says, here is this house, here are the dimensions, here's the geographical coordinates, here's the size, here's the address, like physical address for it. And today, so-and-so, Justina, is the owner of that house. And tomorrow she might sell it to somebody and somebody else becomes the owner of that house. So think of blockchain as a way to register the asset itself first, and then the ownership of the asset. And then what we would have is a market or marketplace of buyers and sellers to determine the price of the asset and to provide liquidity. So eventually all these assets would be traded on a marketplace. You could buy and sell, because now we could track what the asset is, we could track the ownership, and all we need is a buyer to determine what price they're going to buy the asset on, and we need a seller who's willing to sell at that price. And here we have a trade. So as you widen your lens, you will start seeing possibilities everywhere. You will see that literally everything, including your own identity, your own data, your own DNA, your own holographic identity, your own genetic identity, to everything around you physically, your car, your phone, as I said before, or anything that is virtual already. All of those things can be and will be turned into or minted into or published as an NFT and will be traded in a marketplace of buyers and sellers. So think about that possibility. I'll let you look at this chart for a second. At the bottom, you will see the use cases of different types of NFTs. On the top, you will see the characteristics. Now, we haven't really talked much about blockchain, but that is the underlying technology that is enabling this asset to be tokenized and hence to be able to be traded. What is blockchain? Blockchain, to me, is a cryptographically secured, distributed, but shared ledger. Without going into technical details, what you need to think about is, back in the day, we used to have paper ledgers or even stone-based ledgers. What is a ledger? Ledger is a record of accounting. It says somebody owes this much, somebody credits this much money, somebody debits this much money, or a set of transactions written on, back in the day, on stone, and then on paper, and then on databases. So we still continue with this idea of a ledger. The Excel sheets that you see are basically ledgers, right? So this is just a distributed ledger, meaning the ledger is not owned by one entity or one person, but it is a shared ledger amongst the network participants. And it is secured or kept tamper-proof via advanced mathematics, also called cryptography. That's all you need to know to understand the implications of it. And I'm happy to get into technical specifics if somebody likes. So the big feature or characteristic of blockchain is that once a transaction is written, once a data is written onto the distributed ledger, it is considered to be quote unquote immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. And that is what gives us trust on that data. That is a basic fundamental difference from a ledger that you may own personally, like your database or a company's database or a government's database for that matter. If some entity, you as a person, a government, or a company owns the certain database, they always have an opportunity or a possibility of changing the data. We have to trust that entity that they will not change. And this is a feature that is taken away in a distributed ledger. Because as soon as you write or publish data onto a distributed ledger, it is considered immutable. It cannot be changed. And it's by design so. So that allows us meaning the participants of the network or people who are part of that network, think of it that way, have trust. We can trust that once the data is written, once the transaction is written, it can never be changed. And that allows us to create this quote unquote registry of assets on top of it. So moving on, if you understand all of this, and if you've been watching the space of NFTs grow this year, which has been a record-shattering year for media attention and the growth of the space, and the number of NFTs coming up and the number of people joining those marketplaces and trading those NFTs, it's been crazy. So these are the type of questions that you may have in your mind. Is this another tulip mania? Is this just, a fad that's going to go away? What is the technology that is creating these NFTs? We just talked about that. What is considered value? So this is a question that comes up often. Somebody would say, well, oh, somebody bought this piece of art or NFT for whatever, $60 million. Why? Why is it so valuable, right? And then people even go further and say, this is actually looks ugly to me. This is not artistic. Why is this considered art? And then who owns the intellectual property rights or copyrights of these NFTs? How are these rights to be asserted or preserved? What happens, let's say I made an NFT and I sell it to Jessica. Jessica sells it to Christina next year. And Christina sells it to Justina next year. Well, who owns the right to that art? Could Jessica sell it to Christina? Is that possible to do? And if yes, what happens to the creator, which in this example was Roop? Does he get any royalty from the original creation, even though it is being sold secondary or tertiary or 4, 5, 10 times down the stream? So what business models does it enable? How are creators and artists becoming part of this revenue model? And is this a cultural and a social phenomena? Or is it a technical phenomenon, a technological phenomenon? And then this is a question that's come up in the media a lot. Is this sustainable use of technology? Are we using too much energy just in computation power and not effectively using that energy for this purpose? And then how can you transact or buy and sell these NFTs? So a lot of these questions come up in your mind, and some we would answer, some I will let you wonder about. But these are good questions. If you are at this point, you are along with millions of others trying to figure this out, and it's okay to have these questions. So the question that one would ask is, once you hear all this, do you believe that NFTs are great? Are you for them or against them? So take a look at some of these arguments. These are arguments for and against NFTs. And you could be on one side or the other, or you could even believe both of these things together, right? And that's fine. That's what happens when new technologies enable new ways of lifestyle. We can all have different opinions about it. So here's a conundrum that I go into a lot more detail in my second TED Talk titled How Digital Assets Are Changing the Future of Value. If you get a chance, take a listen and let me know what you think about it. The conundrum is the following. Are we now assigning value to things or assets that have no inherent value at all? For example, that GIF that sold for 60 odd million, or that music video, or a painting in an NFT form, it has no inherent value, or even baseball card. But we have now assigned value to those things. Or because of today's technology, we can identify what we find valuable. Think about it again. Is the technology of today enabling us to identify what we as a society might find valuable, or are we assigning value to things that have absolutely no inherent value? And it's absurd, because now we're getting into the speculative tulip mania. Which one do you think it is? As I said in the TEDx talk, to me, value lies in the eye of the beholder. I think today's technology is enabling us to identify what we as humans find valuable, and there will be different markets for those assets. Meaning, the reason Beeple was able to sell his art for this amount of money is not because somebody was gone crazy and wants to invest that money. It's because Beeple has been developing an ecosystem, a set of patrons and a set of buyers and sellers of his art over generation, over years. And now that technology has allowed us to capture that in a way that can easily be tracked and traced and assigned ownership, we are now able to assign a value to it. And a value is whatever is in the eye of the beholder. Somebody was willing to pay that money to buy. So hence it is valuable. There is no subjective, there is no objective definition of value. It's all subjective in the eyes of the beholder. Same can be said for art. So if you understand all of this, where's the world going to go? There is a term you've heard recently, mostly because Mark Zuckerberg talked about it in his launch of Meta, as Facebook turned into this company. But what is this word Metaverse? It's been around for a while, late 2000s, maybe early 2000s too. What does this even mean? It seems like a techno geek talk, but what are we really talking about? And how does it connect back to NFTs and all these other ideas we've just discussed? So Metaverse to me is a replication of the existing world into a digital space, and then extending that digital space into other digital spaces. What we mean by that is, we live in a physical world, or we used to, and then increasingly through social media, through internet, we started increasingly interacting with each other and living in a digitized world with digital assets and digital type of interactions. Now that space is becoming more and more immersive and interactive. So what that means is you could think of the world, the physical world, Earth, and you could divide that into multiple pieces, and you could have a whole new digital world, which is a representation of the physical world. Or you could do reverse. Imagine you walk into a store, let's say a Target or a Home Depot, and you're wearing these goggles. And as you're walking through the store, you see physical products, but on the goggles, all the research about each of these products comes up. It tells you what the product is about, if there are people who bought it, what is the average consumer rating, what is the price, what are the technical specifications of this product. So think about, and this is actually a thought I've had even before I got into this space or understood. I like to research when I buy things, and I'm sure some of you are like that. So I prefer to do shopping online because I can compare and contrast. I can literally read the specifications. Let's say if I'm buying an electronic item or even something household item, I want to be able to see what it's made of, where did it come from, what are its dimensions or characteristics, what other price is it available from, maybe some other sellers. And all of that was enabled via Amazon. So I preferred that. But then there are people who prefer to go into physical stores and they want to touch and feel, especially clothes and jewelry and things of that nature. So imagine that we combine those two attributes so that you could go into a physical store, touch and feel the physical item, but all this research was available to you on your goggle. You would just scroll, click, and get all the details and make a choice of what you wanted to buy. That is an example of a metaverse. And these are just two ways to think about it. So, which technologies are making the metaverse possible? In my mind, there are 5 of them. Augmented reality, as I've just explained in this last example, it is a layer on top of physical reality. So for those who play video games, if you've ever played Pokemon or something similar, you would get this. Pokemon, you go hunt for Pokemon in a physical world, but it is a digital asset, right? It doesn't actually exist in physicality, but it exists in a virtual space. And the physical reality is augmented through or with the virtual reality. So the interesting part to think about there is the line between the physical and the virtual that a lot of us think that we are crossing. For people of a certain age group who grew up with these technologies, there is no line. They think of this environment, it's part of their landscape and their environment in as natural way as a yard or trees are to you. There is no line that they are crossing. It's all one seamless reality that they live in. And that can be a hard concept if you never grew up in that space. The next technology is, we talked about this already, it's a completely virtual reality. So again, think of video games, but also think of, let's say, sporting events. So perhaps there is a sporting event that only happens in the virtual world, and you're sitting in your immersive room with large TV screens and immersive sound systems, and you're experiencing that sporting event in a complete virtual reality. What's enabling it further, or helping us create these metaverses of these worlds, are technologies of artificial intelligence who can understand our behavior and our interaction with these virtual assets, if you will. And the biggest transformation, in my opinion, has happened in the hardware space, where we now have immersive and haptics-based hardware. Haptics is generally a term used for where you can have tangible or tactile input to things. So if you've ever been to one of those 4D type of movie theaters, where you're sitting and, let's say that there is a large sound on the screen, and then your seat starts shaking. that's an example of a little bit of a haptic type hardware where you can feel physically the effects of sound, right? And those hardware technologies are getting better and better. The form factors are getting better and better. They're getting more and more immersive. So imagine at one point, it'll touch everything in our lives. So let's say you and I are talking. Let's say a grandmother and a grandchild are talking across continents, and a grandchild cries. A grandmother might be not just able to hear, which you could do today, but have some physical sensations because she is in a haptic hardware type environment. Maybe she's wearing some wearables or in a room where she could feel that. She could feel the way her grandchild feels. She could smell the way her grandchild smells. Right? So that is what haptics or immersive based hardware is enabling us to do. And then last, you guessed it, blockchain, which enables us to create these assets, as I've explained before, and register them so we can then trade them. We can identify them as unique pieces of asset that can be tracked in ownership and then can be exchanged, either traded or shared amongst parties. So if you are interested in this space, I would look at these underlying technologies to go deeper into. Each of them have different applications and serve a different purpose. But to me, this is what is creating the metaverse. So here, as we come to the closing of the lecture, I will share with you some use cases, some companies in different use cases of NFTs, be it art or gaming, etc. So I'm not going to read all of these, but just take a look at them. I'm going to scroll through it on the screen. And this is just to give you an idea that some of you may think, oh my God, I heard it today, so it's new. This is not new. It's been happening for a while. Just because Zuckerberg decided to announce it a few days ago, a month ago, doesn't mean that it just happened then. This space has been growing for the last, I guess, is 10 years or so, even perhaps more, if you count the basic building blocks of it. It is now that we are coming to a critical mass where technologies are enabling us to interact, and these assets can now be traded, and people are getting more and more interested in it. So it is a social as well as a technological phenomena, and it is a phenomena that is not going to end today. If you think that this is going to go away, you might want to think again. This is the world that we are going to live in, period. I'm happy to talk more about that. So let's look at art. Trading digital images, trading unique masks. Moving on. There are some marketplaces for NFTs. Some of you may have already used them. Rareable, super rare. Moving on. Another set of marketplaces. OpenSea is the one I've used, is pretty popular these days. Wax has been around for a long time now. My guess is maybe 5 to 6 years, and that at one point they were doing the most number of trades in virtual goods or skins used in video games. Nifty Gateway is another very popular trading marketplace for NFTs. There's some interesting ones in the sports world. You should go to, if you like basketball, imagine being able to own officially the clip from your favorite game, from your favorite star. And here are some in virtual reality. I mentioned this idea of taking the world and dividing it into pieces, and that becomes a virtual world. That's Decentraland. There's another one called Superworld, like that. Very fascinating. So people are buying and selling land and buildings and historical buildings. So let's say there is the Eiffel Tower or the Statue of Liberty or any real world asset you could think of, real world monument you could think of, the forts, or the castles, or even the parks, and you could go buy them in Decentraland or in Superworld in a virtual world. And then maybe you charge people. Let's say you bought the Eiffel Tower. So if people want to come in the virtual world to visit the Eiffel Tower, you charge them a little fee, and that becomes your way to sustain rent. Or you just bought a giant apartment building, and now people want to live in that apartment building in the virtual world, and you charge them rent. So these are just some examples, real world examples. So you don't think that this is all abstract and theoretical and it doesn't exist and this is all fantasy. These are real companies with real people buying, selling, trading, creating, enabling this space. And this is the world that we are increasingly going to live in. So the question basically for you at the end is, who do you want to be? You can be either spectators watching this game being played on the field, or you could be players making the plays in the field. The choice is yours. With that, I thank you, and we can open up for questions.
It was a great presentation, very meaningful. We're going to open for questions. Jessica, you're going to help me out with QA and chat, and let's bring all the attendees to the panelists.
Okay.
So I see a question in the chat. I'll get started with that while you open.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Right. So the question is, you all can read it. The question of Frederick is asking about, can somebody just screenshot or copy an art NFT, right? So the first basic idea, let's go back to fundamentals. What did I say about blockchain? Blockchain enables us to record what is the asset and who owns it. It becomes the de facto registry. So think of it in a way, if I have to relate this question to something that exists in the physical world, let's say, Frederick, you own a house, and that registry that there is such a house at so-and-so street, and the fact that Frederick owns it is written in a ledger in some county office. So what you're really asking is, or the question is, if somebody went and said, no, it's my house. Okay, so anybody could say it's your house, but what does the registry say? If the registry say the house is here and Frederick owns it, that's the official record of the asset and of the house. So to answer your question, somebody could screenshot the NFT. That doesn't make them an owner. Somebody could create their own NFT. That doesn't make them the owner of your NFT, right? So we go back to where is it registered? It's registered on a particular blockchain, and what is the asset? And that defines the ownership of that asset. Now, will people try to copy, and will there be dispute on copyright, etc.? I think yes, because we're going to go from a world where none of these mechanisms existed to where this is the only mechanism that we are going to use to trade assets. So law or legal regulatory frameworks will have to evolve to allow for trading, to allow for copyrights and trademarks to be viewed and to be asserted in this blockchain-based registry, right? So we will need to develop some level of governance, and I think companies are working on that aspect as well. But the basic idea is, once you own something on blockchain, it is difficult to quote unquote steal it or relabel it or repurpose it for your purposes. I hope that helps.
So I have a question.
Yes.
From a blockchain's perspective, do you think the private industry blockchain will reign, or it will be a global governance, more like an international blockchain consortium? I mean, like when they talk private and public and the whole concept of trust.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we will live in a world of multiple blockchain networks for each use cases. What I mean by that is there would be a blockchain network that would become a de facto platform for, let's say, trading diamonds, for example. And then there'll be another one for trading NFTs of basketball events, right? So what I'm saying is that we will have multiple blockchain networks. I don't believe that they will be government-based for multiple reasons that we can get into. But I also don't believe that there is a winner-takes-all approach, meaning that only one blockchain network will be used for every possible use case. I don't think that'll happen. So where we are in the game today, the number of blockchain networks, and everybody's trying to get adopted or be used for some specific type of use cases. And increasingly, we will see winners emerge that'll become de facto or most adopted networks for that particular use case.
Okay, and I just had one more question. When we look at the AI perspective, does AI play a significant role, like a police cop, or does it play a role to issuing new ideas? I mean, like, garbage in, garbage out, the concept of something that is programmed from a source at that level. What do you think?
Yeah, so if I look at AI for its impact on Metaverse, that's really what we are talking about here. Because AI has a lot of, AI is again a foundational technology that has a lot of use cases, a lot of different applications. So we can't really cover all of that in this response. But to me, how does AI help or enable the Metaverse? In quite a few ways. One would be what you mentioned, garbage in, garbage out. So what that means is, let's say that there is a Van Gogh painting and I want to create an NFT of it. Well, how do I know the initial version of the NFT or initial digitized version of a physical Van Gogh is authentic? I think we would need AI and other technologies to create that. Once it is created and it is deemed to be authentic, we can put it on the chain and record it for next transactions and consider it to be a true authentic version. But the first original version needs to still be authenticated. And I think AI will play a huge part in that. So that's one way AI would enable the Metaverse. metaverse. The other way AI would enable the metaverse is by understanding the dynamics between these metaverses and consumer behaviors. So consumer or user behavior is still developing in this space, meaning we're still learning how we interact with each other in these virtual environments. And I think AI has a lot of role to understand that, enable that, and create more thriving environments for us. So AI is going to be a huge enabling technology in the metaverse. I don't think you could imagine a metaverse without AI technologies enabling our engagement in it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Great questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question, or write your question in the QA or chat. Since we are waiting for a question, can you talk about security, about those digital assets? Because that's the biggest concern of everyone that I'm discussing with.
Yeah, so security, if you think of security, security also is a large topic that really can be covered in the next 1 minute or so. But in this context, when we talk about security, we mean being hack-proof or tamper-proof, right? It's basically saying, can somebody claim or take or steal my asset, right? And that's the biggest improvement from a database-based world where blockchains are designed by definition or by design to be more tamper-resistant and tamper-proof. I never say that they're completely unhackable, because that would be theoretically not true. Theoretically, there are possibilities of being hacked. And it, again, depends on the type of blockchain, its design, and the choices the designers have made. So the bottom line is, blockchains by definition, by design, are more tamper resistant, they're more tamper proof. And that is why we have the trust that we can keep our assets, and these chains or distributed ledgers can be used as a registry for our assets because they are more tamper resistant. So can it be hacked? There's always the theoretical possibility, but this is way better scheme of things than the existing world of database-based applications. And if you're interested, we can at some point go to more technical specifics of why I make this statement.
Thank you.
I know you only have a minute. And you raise a very big umbrella, and I think that pushes the concept into quantum computer. Is that something in our horizon that's dangerous for this whole agenda, or it's going to be complemented?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a quantum amount of information to be talked about there. But here's the simple way to think about it. When quantum computers become a practical reality, they are already a reality. There are quantum computers today, but when they become cheap and ubiquitous, what will happen is our algorithms will have to change. So even blockchains that are tamper resistant today based on the current computation power available or computation schemes available, they would have to be adapted. They would have to be changed to be quantum resistant. And we will do that. The basics remain the same, but just because now we have quantum computing as a practical available resource, we will have to change things, and we will. Literally everything from your grids, like electrical grids, to your weapon systems, everything will have to be changed when quantum computing is a reality.
Thank you. Jonathan, I know you had a question.
Oh yeah, I just put it in the chat. But I was basically just gonna ask, what's the best way to get into NFTs, and if there are any resources that we could use to learn more about NFTs, crypto, and the metaverse?
Yeah, Jonathan, that's a big question. So my first question back to you would be, what do you mean by get into NFTs? This could mean many things. This could mean I am a creator and I want to create NFTs. This could mean I am a developer and I want to develop platforms that other people create NFTs. It could mean that I am an investor or a buyer and a seller, and all I want to do is buy and sell NFTs. And the answer is different for each one of them. So first thing is to figure out, what do you mean by get into NFTs, and where does your interest lie? But I would direct you to these marketplaces that some of them I showed on the screen. So you can go to Nifty Gains or OpenSeas or one of those. I mean, there's plenty of NFT marketplaces. There's lots of educational material available there that'll help you understand. But make sure that you don't get sucked into one platform's reality, meaning just because they do things a certain way, it doesn't mean that that is the way things are, that that's the way they do it. So have that in your mind. The other is, what is the way to learn about metaverse? I mean, internet is your friend. There's lots of people talking about it. I am not really into the metaverse. I just started talking about it because it's becoming a topic increasingly that people are confused about. And it is something that relates to these underlying technologies that I do talk about. So you can go on to my link tree and you'll find lots of videos and articles and TEDx talks and lectures, etc. And most of them, well, I should say all of them, are about blockchain and NFTs, not much into the metaverse. But metaverse is something that you will hear a lot more about, right? So you can get into those Oculus glasses and get into metaverse. You can get into some variables and get into metaverse. Or some virtual reality type video games, and you can get into metaverse. There's lots of ways to start, quote unquote, playing with it. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Let's see if we have one more question. Your time is precious. I want to make sure that.
I have a question. Mr. Singh, thank you so much. The question is, how is NFTs, what is the future looking like for NFTs? That's my question in terms of investing and if it's worth going into it, because I've had some kind of realization it can be a risk too, but what is the long term of the NFTs and getting involved with it?
Yeah, so you said a keyword there, which is investing. So a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a legal advisor. I will not advise you on any kinds of investing. The only thing I will say is the following, which I've said before. Everything that is physical and everything, literally everything in your digital virtual environment will eventually become NFTs. This is a prediction you can put my name on. And I've given you a few examples of that. I'll repeat here. From your DNA to your hologram, to your house, to your car, to your phone, to your pictures, to your words, to your music, to your videos. In fact, all the movies that you see on Netflix, today, so we've gone from a world of movies being released in theaters to now movies being released on these OTT platforms, being Hulu and Netflix and the such. Tomorrow, and that day is not so far, we will have movie being released first as NFTs. And then, let's say you buy that movie as an NFT, you will be able to sell it to others. And when others watch it, you will get a royalty out of it. So the point I'm making is NFTs are not going away. Everything in your reality that you can think of will be converted into NFTs. If it's not already, somebody's not working on it, then maybe you should work on it. That's the basic foundational prediction that I can make. Now, in terms of investing, that's your choice, your money. I'm not gonna speculate either ways. It can be a a very lucrative business, if you will. And there are a lot of people that are investing in NFTs and they are taking those risks. The only thing I will mention in that is not all NFT markets will be the same, meaning just because NFT is a technology, think of it that way. So just because there is a painting that you bought on NFT does not mean that painting has value and can be resold. So to me, NFT is just a basic technology and there are multiple marketplaces in it. By that, I mean, let's take baseball cards. Baseball card NFT market is a different dynamic than, let's say, music videos. And even that, let's be specific, in rap music videos versus rock music videos. That's a completely different market to NFTs for baseball versus cricket versus soccer, right? All of these are its own dynamic market and they will have their market behavior. Buyers and sellers will value things differently. So if you do get into investing, start understanding those behavior dynamics. How are these quote unquote assets being valued? And they will be different. One is not the same as others, right? So that's something that you need to go investigate and make choices if you want to spend your time, effort, and money investing and trading. Does that help?
Yes, Mr. Singh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, any more questions?
I'm looking for it. I don't see any more questions. Let me check QA and chat.
Yeah, I don't see any either.
Perfect. I have a question for the students.
Mhm.
What was your understanding? Maybe you guys can put in a chat about the blockchain and Bitcoin. Was it 50%, 30%, 20%?
Well, what we should have done is started with what is
The
the
pulse,
base
yes.
understanding before and after. I usually do that actually.
Yeah, could have done that. But 100%, wow. Thank you, Angel. But we can do the survey on your behalf. Well, 15% on your behalf. We always do that about each keynote speaker, and we're going to give you all that feedback. For your
Yeah, but
first
let's be careful and specific and mindful in framing those questions. I mean, these topics, I teach a course that runs 4 days. It's over 24 hours or sometimes 30 hours of material. And I teach it to senior executives and even they come out with more questions after those 4 days, right? So my expectation of what can be delivered in an hour conversation that bounces in so many topics is quite limited. This is just meant to be a taster, a teaser for you to go investigate further. And if you have more questions, I'm actually happy. That is the idea. It is just to open the window to a different world that you may have been thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to see, remember when we had discussion, when we had those question answer before you started your presentation, mentioning that the younger generation, they understand the blockchain, they understand the Bitcoin. I really want to get the feel, where are they standing?
Yeah. So the question to ask them would be, before this session, what was their understanding or even familiarity?
Exactly.
Understanding, awareness and familiarity with crypto and NFTs before this. Forget even blockchain, which is like an underlying technology that you may or may not have heard of, but at least you've heard of crypto, you've heard of NFTs. So where were you before? And hopefully we move the needle further along.
Very well said. Very good point. But some of the students, they had 100% understanding, and that's excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, that topic, we can talk and talk. We really appreciate you, and you really dive in, and you had hard questions, and you were able to answer all of them. And I think students gonna go and check your site. And if you have any other links that you want to share, you want to put in the chat or something that we can send to them to follow up.
No, that's it. Feel free to keep in touch on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And let's keep the interaction going there. Keep an eye out for a few things. My book's going to come out next year. So if you go onto the book site, you can sign up for updates and discounts. There's an online course that's going to come out right alongside the book. So you can sign up for the same updates and we will make sure that you are informed when the course comes out. That's an on-demand course that you'll be able to watch and play at your need. So hopefully that'll help grow this understanding and grow the set of people who are entering into the space.
Definitely. We also have a Fulton County Center of Excellence LinkedIn group. So whenever you're going to have more information regarding your course, your book, we're going to update students as well. We have a quite large number of students from previous semesters as well.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
So definitely that will be really beneficial for you and for the students because they're eager to learn and they want to know more about this topic.
Right, right. Yeah, happy to share.
So thank you so much on behalf of the Center of Excellence. We thank you so much for having you. We're going to share your information and this recording will be on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Just a last parting thought. I just thought of this. My marketing folks will not be happy if I didn't tell you this, and I forget it myself. So we're just launching a new Instagram channel since all you folks are on Instagram. It is called blockchain_strategy. There's a couple of videos on it already. So go ahead and follow that channel for more interesting news, insights, and commentary in this space. Blockchain_strategy.
Perfect. And we're going to send it out to them as well. And we're going to follow up. So perfect. And some of the students that they have not participated in this team building, they are going to rewatch this video. So we will have more viewers and more feedback.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's keep the conversation going on LinkedIn or Instagram, whatever.
Definitely. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Justina. Thanks, Jessica, for having me.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Take care, guys. You've been wonderful.
Same here.
Thank you. Students, please stay on the call.
I'm going to leave.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you and we're going to send you a follow-up.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.